How you feel today, Jacó?
Okay, Jerry.
All right. You know, a lot has been said about you, but the main thing is that people recognize the fact that you're able to play with real sincerity every style of music. Not only every style, but you can play all parts of a given piece at the same time on this one instrument, the bass. Now, because of this, a lot of people have gone crazy trying to duplicate what you do. People have become great fans of the bass and given it quite a bit of attention. How do you feel about that?
Give me a gig, you know. Well,
what drove you to this point?
Well, I was told, you know, like at a very young age to learn. First thing was to learn the melody to every tune, which I feel is like ultra important. You know, most bass players, most musicians, you know, not just on the bass, but on their particular given instrument, will usually play just the bass part or just the piano part. I mean, the same thing goes for piano players. They should know the bass part too, at least, you know, or whatever.
Right.
But the main thing is the melody, I feel, that most bass players are missing. Because like they'll know the bass part, you know, or whatever, they'll be playing that stuff, and there could be a melody on top, which once you know that, especially when it comes to playing changes, you know, harmonic playing, it's like, let's say like Bach, like canons, where there's like two parts. There's a bass part and there's a melody part. They're just as important because the chords come in the middle.
One supports the other.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, in fact, one helps the other. By hearing another part, you can more or less define where your part's going to be. You can fill the holes up.
Well, plus it's really great to be able to play a melody to a tune. I mean, how many guys can play, you know, on the bass, you know, let's say most people, let's say the melody is always designated, let's say, to a horn player or the piano or the guitar. But it's nice to play it on the bass too.
Certainly. It's a beautiful instrument. Now, what about musicianship? How does this tie in terms of what you studied? Obviously, you mentioned Bach canons. What else did you study? And how does this all come together under the heading of musicianship?
Work. You're just staying out there. In other words, you know, applying it. Okay, let's say so for instance, I just said learn the melodies. So what I tell all my bass students when they first start off is, hey, let's you know, learn the melodies. Do you know the melody, let's say, to Alfie, as opposed to just the bass part? And you know, I mean, that's, you know. You know,
right.
You know, etc.
Yeah, that gives you the feeling of the song.
Yeah, because then it. Plus, it's the most melodic way for a bass player to learn how to play melodic bass lines is by, you know, playing melodically within the bass.
Was there anything else you studied other than Bach? I know you spent a lot of time studying Bach.
Well, I got into that a little later. What I first started studying was, you know, let me see.
Oh yeah. You got into the funk.
What was on the radio.
Yeah.
That's what I first started playing. Like, for instance, that was Funky Broadway, the bass line, you know, Wilson Pickett's Funky Broadway. So
Tommy Cogbill.
Exactly, it's Tommy Cogbill. So doing that stuff is how I learned, listening mostly to radio, keeping my ears open. You know.
Now, were you reading music then?
I didn't start reading until I was older because I was always playing. And this is a good point because anybody that's born with a real talent to play, a natural talent to play, which, you know, I feel I have been, and most all good musicians, you know, that they are born with that talent. to be able to go out and play, they usually can play before they really study. You know what I'm saying? You go out.
Yeah, get the feel of it.
Yeah, you're out doing gigs and that sort of stuff. And then finally, when it came time for me to learn how to read, when I wanted to learn how to read because I couldn't, and it was really, it was really a drag because I already could play. You know what I'm saying? So for me to have to go back and learn how to read was really a pain.
So obviously you learned because with your web report, the stuff that you did was extraordinarily intricate.
Well, I was reading way before I got with web report.
Obviously you had to. But you got to such a high level of reading, to be able to do that at the same time. What did you use to get to that point?
Well, believe it or not, it sounds corny, just hard practice. You got to put in lots of hours because, like I said, you get fed up, especially for the young players that can already play. I mean, how many guys on the street and they all say, wow, yeah. I say, how's your reading? Well, I can read a little bit. Hey, what do you mean a little bit? Man, if a guy says that, he can't read.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's
you got to sit down and practice read. It's hard. I mean, I used to spend hours a day just with any book I could get a hold of. Treble clef, any clef, bass clef, of course, but just any type of music I could get my hands on just to get in it.
How did you get into playing the bass? I know you played drums earlier. Can you tell us that story?
Well, I was in a band called the Los Olas Brass. It was like a funk rock band, play rock roll, a lot of rhythm and blues. All the hits, Aretha, from everything from the Tijuana Brass to the big, soul hits of the day. That's basically what we were doing. We had 6 horns and 3 rhythm. I was playing drums and I had broken my wrist very bad playing football. And the bass player in the band, he wanted to split. So I just went to the bass. I went from drums over to bass. That was it. I was playing the bass within a week.
Wow. And the fretless bass?
The fretless, I took the frets out of my bass after I was, because I was getting into jazz a lot and I wanted to have that upright sound, So I had an upright. The upright, it took me years and years to, get enough bread to get it. I'm from Florida, so one morning I woke up, go in the corner and the bass is in 100 pieces, because humidity's so bad. The upright just blew up. I said, forget it, man, I can't afford this anymore. So I went out, got a knife, and took all the frets out of my fender. That was it.
And the rest is history. Incredible. To be able to pick up an instrument and play with in a week's time means you have to have some kind of learning skill. Okay, and to take it to the next step, not only have a learning skill, but develop to execute such, flawlessly as you do.
Well, the main thing is just paying attention to people on any instrument. For instance, you look at a guitar player, you just, look at another bass player, just see what he was doing. That's how mainly I learned most everything.
So it's visual.
Visual as far as just technique. Let's see, because I would see, one thing my father told me once when I first started playing the bass, he came home, he saw me, and he said, just to put my fingers, space them just like at every fret. Because I was just playing. You know what I mean? I was playing like that, and with that's how I was playing the bass, right? So then he said, so I would, because I just put my, Okay, so that's like spacing your fingers just by the fret. Is as big of a thing that you could do, and alternate your fingers accordingly. It's just very basic.
Well, it certainly has worked. Now, as far as getting into little details of this aspect, just left-hand spacing, okay. But what about the what other aspects of the left hand? Because your intonation is, you have to play fretless bass. First of all, intonation has to be right on it.
Well, one thing, for instance, right now I'm using a fretted bass. How I got my intonation on the fretless is by, first of all, I never practiced a fretless ever because the strings would always eat the neck up. So I would only play it on gigs. But see, when I would practice with the fretted bass, it's harder actually to play a fretted bass than a fretless because of the fret noise. So I would but I would play it, and you play exactly on the fretted bass where you do on the fretless. You just play, you can play here in the middle, it doesn't matter because the tone's going to come out. But and that's where you get the best sound also on a fretted bass. I mean, if you want to get into
Clearer.
Clearer, exactly. So when you go to fretless, and seeing that I had taken my frets out, you know, I had little, the marks were still there because I put Duratite, some sort of wood putty in there, right? So you could see that, which helped too, you know, because, you know, the fretless, or Fender bass, excuse me, you know, it's got such a long neck. Like on the upright, you got position. You just go this far, and you're in the thumb position. You know, you can feel the neck.
Right.
I mean, you got to go about this far. You know, I mean, it's a long way. You got
feels the same.
You got to look at the neck if you're making big jumps. So, you know, that helped a lot, having the fret markers. You know, where the holes were filled in, and then practicing scales. You know, just straight scales gets your hand in shape, so that once you start off someplace, you know, once you get on the first note, you can go for a long time without having to, you know, check yourself out if you're playing in position. You know what I mean?
What about this twilight zone area up here, where everybody finds it hard to play because you can play the same thing back here that you can play up here? How'd you work that up? Because a lot of you playing in this solo area of the instrument, you know.
Well, different ways of doing scales. For instance, if you just go. See that? I came all the way from that low C. We're in the key of C. There's a low C, there's a high G. Okay, now this is all without moving my hand once. You see what I'm saying? And it's all right there. You know what I'm saying?
All in one position.
Okay, then there's other ways. See, because most bass players, for instance, this is something that I've been doing the last few years. So you know, taking like, going up to the third, then you got, you know, fourth to the sixth, you know, then major seventh, then you'd be the ninth. By that time, you'd be up to the 12th already. You know what I mean? It's like, that's very convenient as opposed to, you know, the way you usually would learn. See, I mean, that's how most people probably originally learned with
that's
it.
Making the smoother approach.
Well, that's normal because that's the way from up here, like you were saying.
So you're playing on less strings. Yeah, that makes a big difference.
And to have skipping, you know, skipping from string to string, like good exercises are like sixes. Most people don't practice sixes. Like, you see what I'm saying? Where you're alternating a string before you're even going anywhere else. You're already jumping.
How about your endurance? You have incredible endurance.
That's just from years and years of gigging. That's all. I mean, I used to play 8 sets a night every night when I was a kid, you know, for a year at a time without a night off, that sort of stuff. That's just playing a lot.
You were playing in R&B bands then a lot then?
Yeah, just playing like rhythm and blues all night. Because I never really had to practice all that much for endurance because I had it from playing so much. Like in fact, I do most of my practicing without even an instrument, just thinking it. Because my chops, you know, from so many years of playing.
Well, that's where your musicianship really comes to the fore.
Yeah, well,
you can do that.
I'm just lucky enough to have, you know, grown up in an era when rhythm and blues was really at its forte. I mean, that's when you were doing most of your stuff, like with Atlantic and everything. And that's people, the style of music that people were into when I was growing up. So there were lots of dance gigs, you know, playing R&B and funk, and then sneak some jazz in on the side, whatever, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. What about the use of arpeggios in terms of developing fingerboard memorization?
Well, that's the greatest. You know, plus it's just about the hardest thing to play, in my opinion, on the bass. Like piano, for instance, it's easy. Mm-hmm. But on a bass, guitar, that skipping, that, you know, just, that's tough. One way that I teach cats is just 2 octave up the board, like this. Okay?
Yes.
I mean, this way your hand is moving every note. Mm-hmm. Okay,
as
every note is
playing it in position.
Yeah, as opposed to just going, let's say.
In that position.
Yeah, as opposed to go. Yeah, you know, because you go. As opposed to doing like an easy skip, like. As opposed to doing that, or I go.
You get up much faster.
You can get there real fast. It's smoother, mm-hmm. but it's tough, and it teaches you where the notes are on the fingerboard. You got to be thinking every note where. Okay, and then what you do is you run that stuff. I don't even know if I can do it anymore. Wait a minute.
Now, double stops is another thing I find is really helps you learn the fingerboard also.
Well, because you have to think 2 notes at a time all the time.
Multi-stops.
Yeah.
So your exercises seem to be more or less in terms of like mental, in terms of developing things that make you
think.
That's
ultra important, because that way you can, especially in improvisational music, mm-hmm. you know where the stuff's at to go for, as opposed to just jiving, let's say, where people are just wiggling their fingers and
mm-hmm.
know a couple of licks. I mean, this way we're talking about, you know, the real deal. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see with arpeggios really pay off because you play a lot of things in thirds, large intervals.
Well, plus going up and back with them too. Here's a good exercise. You know, so what I'm saying is, now all I did was go up in a major, you know, let's say a 7th, well, what would you just call it, a chord? It's a arpeggio, a major 7th arpeggio, so it'd just be, let's say, because I'm doing everything in C now. So it would be C major, D minor 7, E minor 7.
Come down to F.
F, you know, and then you go up on a G7, right? Then you come down on the A minor, up on what actually would be like, what do you call it, the dominant 7th chord, G7 without the G in it.
See, you're using a diatonic use of the scale, playing the chords, but you're using it in a very musical way instead of going up, you know.
Oh yeah, not making it a practice, make it actually, you know,
make it musical.
Exactly, that's very important.
And it reflects in your playing also.
Well, I always try to be musical, yeah, but, well, you know, sometimes it does. I hope not all the time, you know. But I mean, there's things to practice, you know.
That's just using
That was
the
just
scale.
whole tone. That was just a whole tone scale, alternating fingers with different numbers. You know, just like making maybe patterns of 3 and 4 notes at a time, or 5 notes at a time. You know, like a one.
I noticed that while you're playing, you vary your left hand position and technique. Can you explain a little bit of that?
Well, lots of times it's got to do with just a tone I'm going for. Sometimes I'll like bend strings, which you got, you know, like a guitarist. And sometimes, you know, depending on, especially on the fretlets, let's say, sometimes I got different ways of just getting different tones out of my vibrato, you know. And when it's, and most of all, it's just whatever's comfortable. Tell you the truth, you know. You know, because sometimes you'll be playing, you know, you change your hands to get that would actually have something to do with the what'd you say, my endurance, even, you know what I mean? Like sometimes you just change your hands to get a different, so you know, like your left shoulder ain't breaking halfway through.
Change the muscles
yeah
up.
Exactly. So that's got a lot to do with it, just part of the endurance.
Left hand. Now, of all this left hand execution, you're getting a sound, I know, from your left hand, but your right hand also amplifies the sound. I know sometimes you play in this area, high above, at the end of the fingerboard, you play over this pickup. You'll play here, you'll play here. You play everywhere on the instrument. It's like you play all the music, you play all the bass. You know, how does this affect the sound? What are you doing when you're doing this? What are you going for when you're playing back here? So,
well, the main thing when I'm playing in the back is when I'm playing fast for speed. Okay, because needless to say, the string is not as taut here as it is here. So the main thing is this just doesn't move as much. So it's quicker up here. See that?
Slower.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
Back here, that's all the further I'm going. Use your thumb too, you know, for double stops a lot. I use my thumb. Up here, you get a more rounder tone. See? There's a harder.
when you're playing, what about picking technique?
First of all, let's start at the beginning of picking.
Okay.
So this is just, which is the hardest thing, it's just, just alternating your fingers. That's the toughest thing with the right hand to begin with, you know, so. That alone is as hard as anything you'll ever have to play on the bass, and then doing it with the other fingers too, which I can't even do.
Opposite.
Yeah, and then like, see how that, I'm coming back right then, I just rake them coming back. When you rake something, if you want to rake the string, in other words, then you're gonna have to mute it down here. You know what I'm saying? Exactly.
The left hand.
Otherwise, it's just gonna be, you know, it's easier when you're picking something because
the hand is already there.
yeah, so what you do is you just lightly, you know, after you pick each note, you just take the finger off on your left hand, and then it's short, you know, because otherwise you just have, you know.
You don't want that.
Exactly.
You don't want that.
So then what I do is just, that's where like scales come in, just over and over.
Now you're incredibly clean. Your sound is like, there's no added noise. So it's like you're, with playing the bass.
Now that's a combination of both hands. You know, the good picking, but also the good muting with your left hand.
Left hand muting.
Left hand muting, yeah. Like Donna Lee, I mean, it took me years, it took me 9 years to learn how to play Donna Lee, for instance. But most of that was not just, was mostly making the instrument not make noise, excuse me. In other words, not making noise with between the left hand and the right hand. I mean, you know. I mean, that's tough. You know, so you got, both hands really got to be working together on that.
Together.
A lot of it is with the left. I only pick with these two fingers. These other ones are always like muting somehow. Like they'll be sitting here. You see what I'm saying? Like when I'm playing, these will be sitting here, usually like this. Something like this to prevent your right hand from making the noise down here. That helps here. Okay, because basically you could do, you know,
with one hand.
You know, anybody. But now you heard the noise that I was just getting.
Exactly.
So you know.
So the right hand helps you mute that.
Exactly. It's basically just laying it down. Is all it is. And these two fingers are usually taking care of the G and the D, and this is usually taking care of the E. Because you know, you probably do lots of playing on an A. Seeing that that's where most of the best bass tones are at. Right. Sorry. also is a good thing. Like, this is not my normal bass. I got a precision bass neck on here deliberately to have to stretch my hands. Well, because the jazz bass neck is thinner, which I usually play on stage. But this is good. It's good to practice on something, because like coming down, you saw me, and I was starting to like scuff up a little bit, man. But it's good because it makes your fingers stretch. Anyway,
Playing that pattern. Now you're playing a 6-note pattern there.
all I'm doing, I was just playing, I think I started on a G minor, a 12th, I don't know, what 9th, 10th, yeah. I mean, that's about as much as you can do to really stretch your hand. And then the other thing I was just coming down with, then I was going up, the next note's going up major with a flat 5 then. Right. Then go back to the minor again. Just something to think. You just play a minor, major, minor, major. Well, they're not scales. Those are arpeggios, but it's just something like to think about the neck, where all the notes are, getting back to what we talked about earlier, knowing where all the notes are on the neck. Like my father said to me once, he said, Jacko, look, I'm going to come back in a year. He was on the road, he says, and I want you to know where every note is on the neck. If I say I want a C sharp on your G string, a high one, you better know where it is, And when he came back the next year, I knew it, because I know cats that can really play, and they don't even know where the notes are still.
Yeah, that's true. So your father's a musician also?
Yeah, he's a drummer and a singer.
All right. Terrific. So you're basically self-taught then?
Formally self-taught.
Formally self-taught. Thank you. What about rhythm? I noticed, like I mentioned before, you were playing a 6-note pattern, and I was able to tell between playing a 6-note pattern, a 5-note pattern, a 4-note pattern. Do you feel this is part of your fast development, having a good feeling and knowledge of rhythm?
Well, rhythm is the whole deal,
Thank you.
So, like I always say, women in rhythm section first, So, just play with the drummer. That's the thing, I feel that the bass player, not being prejudiced or nothing, I feel that we have the most important role in a band, because we have the harmony and the rhythm,
And sometimes the melody.
And the melody too, but mainly the harmony and the rhythm we got, because whatever note we play on the bottom is going to change any chord up, and rhythmically we're pushing, or laying back, whatever.
So you say play with the drummer.
That's what I really look forward to doing. That's what I have the best time doing.
How did you arrive at your distinctive sound?
I would say probably just the years of playing, like being on gigs mainly. And lots of things that have to do with the sound, as opposed to not just the sound, is your choice of notes. There are, different choice of notes, let's say, that I use often. And people know, like, I wrote this tune on Barbary Coast, and I start off, wait, he goes, edit, he goes, okay, so lots of times when I'm playing, I'll be going like, I'll just, people might know that's me just because of the choice of notes, as opposed to just the sound. There's certain figures that everybody plays.
And the rhythm also in that, because that's a rhythmic figure there also.
So choice of notes has a lot to do with it too, because the choice of notes makes you pick different, makes you go for other things,
What about harmonics? That's something that you pioneered. I mean, instruments have had harmonics on them forever, but you have like almost as if you went into a mine and, we've gotten gold out of something that wasn't there before.
Well, when I was first playing in bands, a friend of mine, I saw him just tuning his guitar with harmonics, which everybody does, and so that's how I learned how to tune my bass. You know, it's real tough to figure out, right? So I was just doing this. Sounded like music to me, so I just kept exploring it. That's all there was to it. You know, I said, wow, that's the chord on Alfred Hitchcock, which it is when the cellos are in fourths, you know. So I said, solid, man. It must mean something. Wow, there it is. I told you I haven't done it in years.
Does it make a difference which instrument you play? I mean, if you would play it on this instrument, would it be the same thing?
I can play it on any instrument. That's no problem. As a matter of fact, it's funny. Most people say, wow, it's because he plays a fretless, he gets such great harmonics. There's nothing to do with it. As a matter of fact, it's easier with a fretted bass because you could play more false harmonics in tune without thinking.
How is that false harmonic achieved?
I do it with my thumb. It's the same thing as open string, see? In other words, okay, so if you play any note, all you have to do is make as if you're playing an open string. I mean, that's how I thought to start doing that with the false harmonic. So let's say if I'm playing an A, just separate it in half. There it is, perfect. Wait a minute. It's the same overtone series, just like a trumpet or anything. It's those are your basics. There's your octave. Then it just keeps going up. It's got the seventh in it. It's a basic overtone series. It's no mystery. It's just I pick it with like guitarists, for instance. They go like this, something. I put my thumb here and pick behind it.
Pick behind the thumb.
Yeah, I put the thumb up here.
And then
guitarists do it like this somehow. I don't know how they do it. I just go like this.
You're getting the same note out.
So it's the same difference if I went, right? Let me see, I gotta get right in half. See what I'm saying?
So the thumb becomes the open string? Is that what happens? The thumb?
No, this becomes your left hand.
The left hand becomes the open string?
This becomes what this finger would be over here. Your thumb is doing.
The thumb takes the place of the left hand finger.
Yeah, and then you just happen to be picking right behind it, like. So then, like
you change the note.
What I used to do is. See, so every time you're picking, you got to be moving everything. That gets tough. See what I'm saying? You have to make sure that you're picking. That's the hardest thing. You got to be moving. I mean, that much, yeah.
Hand. In Portrait of Tracy on your first solo album, you used harmonics exclusively. Could you play a little bit of that for us?
Okay. I haven't played this in years. I don't really remember it. But
no excuses.
Hey, wait a minute. This ain't an excuse. It's a fact. I forget. There's a little segment in the middle, but it's easy. Like, let me see how I go. I know. I remember that. Let me see. Right. Out of shape, man. I forget what I do then. Something.
Remember the end. The beginning.
Everybody thought that was over now. That's for real, man. Yeah, man.
You're definitely
That's
for real.
tough. See, I did the same thing I was talking about up here with F sharp, a B, and an E here. Got the E in the bass. Then I went up to the third, just as if I went to the B of the G on the open string, right? And just so I got G sharp. Then I got D sharp. Then I got A sharp. So I got like a flat 5, major 7 flat 5, or E major 7 flat 5.
Now would you say? Special tuning there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking the other day about listening to the radio and you learning everything that was on the radio. Out of all the music you listen to, which music you would influence more by, and what particular players, if any, that you might have come across?
Mostly popular music. Mm-hmm. Elvis Presley, Beatles, James Brown, Sinatra, whatever. At that period, that's when I was coming up. Like, let's say the 60s. Mm-hmm. Whatever was like hip then, that's what I was checking out. Mostly from the radio, whatever you see on TV, that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I really wasn't influenced that much by bass players. To tell you the truth, I didn't even know who the bass players were most of the time.
That's true, they wouldn't tell you.
You just knew who the singer was, you know. So mostly like off 45s. Mm-hmm. So, but like players like yourself, for instance, you were on a lot of those Atlantic dates, out of Muscle Shoals, etc., New York. A lot of Aretha dates, that stuff knocked me out. So you're a big influence. I know Bernard Odom was. He played with James's band. Bootsy used to play with James's band. Mm-hmm. And Cool, I like Cool. He was great. Jameson, of course. Yeah. Duck Dunn.
Yeah.
Those were like, my big influences. Then with the upright, into the jazz thing, like Paul Chambers, of course, and Gary Peacock, I liked a lot. And,
what about Mingus?
Mingus was great. I didn't hear that much of his bass playing. I mostly heard his orchestral stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I loved his bass playing, but I always loved his music even more.
Yeah, his writing was something else.
Yeah, I feel you're at that level also where like his writing is like even going beyond, no matter how great a bass player you are, your music just goes even beyond that.
Yeah, Mingus was great. I really liked him a lot. And all the cats that were on all the records, Paul McCartney, I love his bass playing. Yep. All the cats, whatever was out there.
Doing it.
There was some good stuff.
The marketplace.
Lots of records too. Harvey Brooks, with the Electric Flag, and Billy Rich with Buddy Miles, that whole period of stuff. It's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Great. Can you give me one example of any particular style thing something that stuck with you out of all those people you mentioned?
Enough said.
Okay.
Thanks, Jay. No,
okay.
That was Jerry's bass part with B.B. King. What tune was that on?
Could have been one about 4 or 5. That was a Live and Well album.
Yeah, on Live and Well.
One of those pieces.
What'd you do?
Yeah. Okay.
It was about something like that.
Plays it better than I do. Any advice to musicians, young and old, new, beginners?
Just keep your minds open, you know, keep a open head about music. I grew up in Florida where there was no real musical prejudice. Mm-hmm. There was all sorts of music. Everybody was playing everything from Cuban music to symphonic music, everything. Whatever you wanted to hear, you could hear it. You know, like in New York. I know when I first came to New York, it's like everybody just wanted to play jazz. They didn't know about rock and roll. They didn't know about funk. Yeah. They didn't know about nothing. All they wanted to do was jazz. Now New York is cool. They're playing everything.
Everything.
But I grew up in Florida, and everything was hip. Mm-hmm. So I was fortunate enough to be exposed and be able to play with all different types of musicians. And you know, I played in a country band for a year. I had a ball. You know, I love country and western too. If it's good, I dig it. Whatever it is, just to keep an open mind about everything. Yeah, that's about my only advice. Mm-hmm. And keep listening.
Beautiful.
Keep your ears open.
All right, I need to hear it. You can't get enough of that.
Tell me.
I know you play with some of the great musicians, especially bassists. How do you distinguish between Jaco's style and, let's say, the normal bass player?
Right. Well, when Jacó is normal, his style is different. It's very what you might call unnormal. He's very different. When he tries to solo, he comes up with new ideas as much as possible. He's been playing for quite some time, but he strives for new ideas all the time. So consequently, playing with him is always a surprise. It's a surprise, That's part of what makes it beautiful to be on stage as a jazz musician, as a musician who improvises, is that there are surprises.
Now, what do you think of when recording as opposed to performing? There is a difference in thought. Or do you differentiate between the two? Does it make a difference when you hit the stage or you go into the recording studio?
I see a big difference, personally.
See a big difference? Could you run it down?
Well, when I go into the studio, I definitely have to have more of a plan, because it's something that you're making for that idiom. There's definitely a difference. Musically, there's not that much of a difference, but the way that you behave before you get there, like I would never practice before a gig. But I mean, I practice all week for this to make sure my fingers could do technical things for this particular thing, okay? If you're doing a record date and you know some of the music in advance, you be thinking about it and you make sure your chops are ready to cover it. So there is a big difference. When you're doing your gig every night, man, third or fourth tune, you're gonna be warmed up. you're gonna be hitting. Once a couple tunes you in there and everything is gonna be all right. But recording, there is a big difference, in my opinion. I don't know, Kenwood, what do you think?
When you play live, the audience is right in the present time with you, as you play.
So you can play off of the audience in that sense.
Well, we've done several albums with weather reports, for instance, most of that stuff everyone thinks is live is us playing in front. We're in a studio, but with like a studio big enough to also have a small audience in there too. So you also are, you got the best of both worlds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.